Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this March 3rd, 2025 at 8:03 a.m. Central Standard Time. Just a little more standard time for us. I think we are going to spring forward this month and do that whole daylight savings abomination. I am in favor of staying on standard time. However, I will take permanent daylight time if necessary, as long as we just don't have to do this damn changeover. I've got, I want to say 4 pieces for you today. 3 of them from Erik Carlson, 1 of them from Billie. Before I do that, I would like to request that you go to epicminerals.net. That's epicminerals.net and get the combo package, guys. The combo package, what am I talking about? Well, I am talking about Epic Minerals Zeolite Extra Spray, Epic Minerals Silver Extra Spray, and Epic Minerals Amazing Wellness Extra Capsules. The 3 of these represent the health boom that you've been looking for your entire life. Humic and fulvic acid, N-acetyl L-cysteine, otherwise known as NAC, vitamin D, other trace nutrients, zeolite, colloidal silver, humic and fulvic acid in the sprays as well. These detoxify and nutrify. They turn back the clock, guys. One of the other things is they've made it so that I have been more effective in the bedroom. Just saying. Go to epicminerals.net. Use promo code Shapiro for 10% off. Epicminerals.net. You don't know health until you've taken care of your health. And guys, the environment you live in, the food you're eating, the water you're drinking, the air you're breathing are absolutely riddled with poisons. Get rid of them and get healthy. Epicminerals.net. Promo code Shapiro. And now from Billie.substack.com. Guantanamo Bay. The message is clear. If you break the law, if you are a criminal, you can find your way at Guantanamo Bay. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. How many people were paying attention to Guantanamo Bay prior to Donald Trump's presidency? Most of us probably knew it existed and that it housed the terrorists who attacked our country. Other than that, I wonder how many everyday Americans were aware of the agreement between Cuba and the United States allowing us access to the area, or how many understand that there are different areas of the island, one area housing the Navy base and another area housing the detention center, or that its residents contain not only the 9/11 attackers, but also attackers from the USS Cole bombing and other terror attacks. There didn't seem to be much interest in the area in years past. When Obama was elected, he vowed to close it, but failed. President Trump not only kept it open, he upgraded it. Now, suddenly, Guantanamo Bay is being pushed into focus. I wonder why. Last year, I set out to understand the area and the improvements that had taken place there. I wanted to learn for myself if any of the rumors or conspiracy theories I heard and believed myself were true. The rumors regarding improvements are true and can be confirmed through the Department of Defense and media reporting. The conspiracy theories are a little harder to prove. New restrictions placed on the media in 2018 only contribute to the mystery and conspiracy theories. It was odd that after decades of access to the area, the media were suddenly restricted in where they could go and what they could photograph. In my conspiracy mind, it only made sense that the government was hiding something. The current semi-permanent residents. The first detainees arrived at Guantanamo Bay in January 2002. They include suspects in the USS Cole bombing, the September 11th World Trade Center attacks, and other terrorist attacks. The New York Times published trial guides for the USS Cole and September 11th terrorist attacks. If you're interested in understanding more about those trials, the USS Cole attack took place in October 2000, and the suspect was captured in 2002. The date of his trial is set for 2025, almost 23 years after he was taken into custody. The reason for the delays range from challenges by both sets of lawyers, a judge throwing out 2 years of rulings due to a conflict of interest, the dismissal of the suspect's confession, and of course, COVID. It's not my place to say what is or isn't the right course of action in this case, but it seems to me that the only people getting any relief from this trial are the lawyers. I'm assuming that both the prosecution and defense attorneys are being funded by the American taxpayer. The most notorious detainees at Guantanamo Bay are the suspects in the September 11th World Trade Center attacks. 4 different judges have presided over that case since the defendants were arraigned in 2012. Like the USS Cole bombings, the delays in the trial are hard to digest. They include the change in judges, weather in Cuba, weather in Washington, D.C., power outages, communications problems, and of course, COVID. To add to the extended delay was a plea deal that was agreed to and then canceled during the Biden term. After almost 2 years of negotiations, in July 2024, the lawyers for the 3 9/11 attackers announced that they had reached a plea agreement. However, in August, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin revoked the plea deals, saying that he was the one with the authority to negotiate such a deal. On November 7th, the judge presiding over the trial ruled that the plea agreements were valid and that Defense Secretary Austin exceeded his authority when he revoked them. The plea deals were back on track, and the defendants could plead guilty to their involvement in the attack. The hearing on the plea deals was rescheduled for January 22nd, 2025. I assume this should have closed the chapter on the 9/11 cases, but another delay prevented that from happening. On January 23rd, 2025, the prosecutor asked the judge to delay the proceedings until the Trump administration was in place and could familiarize themselves with the plea deal. Just like the USS Cole trial, I assume both sets of lawyers are funded by the American taxpayer. Catherine Herridge reports. In November 2024, the Department of Defense invited the media to cover the 9/11 pretrial proceedings, scheduled for January 20th through the 31st, 2025. The DoD release stated that the purpose was to cover the proceedings, and tours of the detention facilities would not be available. Requests for reporting on topics unrelated to the military commissions were to be coordinated in advance. We've been led to believe that Catherine Herridge is a journalist who is somewhat in the loop, and we should follow the pen. When she posted to X from Camp Justice the day before President Trump's inauguration, renewed interest in Guantanamo Bay spiked. She included a suggestive message of "stay tuned" on her X post. It was only natural for us to anticipate exciting news. Unfortunately, it was obvious pretty quickly that Catherine wasn't going to deliver a groundbreaking disclosure when she added the $7 monthly subscription to her posts. Expecting us to pay a monthly subscription to learn about the justice we've been waiting for would be just cruel. If something noteworthy happened while Catherine was there, we would know it by now. Although I didn't subscribe to Catherine's reporting, I've seen some of the videos from her time there. I was surprised by the photos and videos she posted to X. Media restrictions and tightened censorship began during President Trump's first term. The new restrictions were not well received by journalists, and in 2023, The Intercept published an article titled "Censorship Has Never Been Worse at Guantanamo Bay." With that in mind, it was odd to see Catherine Herridge posting videos she filmed with a production crew. She may have requested approval in advance, but there is a noticeable difference in her images and those from journalists who speak of the delay in getting approval for basic photographs. Carol Rosenberg on X, January 31st, 2025. The sign at Camp Justice on the left got an upgrade last week. Security officials here at Guantanamo Bay granted permission for the 2 reporters on base to take a photo of it on Tuesday morning. It was cleared yesterday, so you get to see it too. Carol Rosenberg of the New York Times has been reporting from Guantanamo Bay for over 2 decades. The video below contains her interpretation of the current operations there.
This satellite photo was taken in 2023, and you see that these are empty fields with cement pads, and this one was taken on February 12, 2025. They started putting the tents in, and this is where the migrants would go. We don't know at the end of the day whether this will be used on the scale that the president has authorized, but this is what they're preparing for, this way station for tens of thousands of migrants that the new administration wants to deport back to their homelands.
I was the first journalist and photographer down there to witness what was happening.
What made Doug's pictures so remarkable is it is a brief snapshot of an operation that has only been shown through social media by the government.
This photo here shows a group of tents that had just been erected. None of these tents were filled yet. It looks like they were in the early process of getting this together. The inside of the tent looked like it would hold about 12 to 14 people. It had 2 openings on each end. It had vents on the sides. Obviously, it's going to be very warm down there in the coming months.
I've been traveling to Guantanamo Bay since 1999. They opened the prison in 2002, but even before that, Guantanamo Bay was a place where the United States held migrants, sometimes in large operations, sometimes in small measures, for decades. This plan was designed a very long time ago, but for another purpose. This is an infrastructure that was prepared in the event of a humanitarian crisis in the Caribbean. But President Trump made a pledge to take the men and women they want to deport from the United States and put them into this structure.
This was a February 7th flight that arrived in Guantanamo Bay. The Secretary Noma is watching the detainees being escorted off. I didn't think they would be in handcuffs and shackles the way they were. The men in this photograph, they were taken from here onto the buses and then over to Camp 6.
You have Camp 5, which is currently where they are housing the last of the prisoners from Afghanistan. And this is Camp 6.
My last visit to Guantanamo Bay was in 2019 when I was able to photograph the jail cells at Camp 6. It crossed my mind that these Venezuelan immigrants were going to be taken to the same camp that I visited in 2019.
So while the vision is a tent city, so far this is a way station, short-term location for people who will be sent onward to their countries.
178 Venezuelan immigrants were at that facility. They were all flown out yesterday. 177 were deported, while 1 was sent to a detention facility in the U.S.
What we don't know is what is the future of this operation? Who are the people they're going to bring? We don't know what access they'll have to the courts. We don't know how much of this is messaging to the American people and how much of this is going to be a meaningful deportation operation.
Since she was there at the same time as Catherine Herridge, I assumed they were both reporting on the hearings for the 9/11 and the USS Cold bombing cases. Although I haven't seen all of Catherine's reporting, I found it unusual that she didn't mention the power outages that delayed the hearings. While I may have missed her reporting, it seemed like important information to share, even with unpaid subscribers. Carol Rosenberg mentioned it almost daily. On January 22nd, Rosenberg reported that an unscheduled power outage had plunged the media center and other facilities into darkness. That afternoon, she reported more rolling power outages. Quote, "It's been a challenge to holding and reporting on these war court hearings," end quote. The next day, Rosenberg posted that she was heading back to court for the 9/11 hearings, saying, quote, "Hopefully the power grid is less wobbly today at Guantanamo Bay. I was told that the power failed 4 times yesterday during the hearings in the USS Cole case at the adjacent new courthouse." Later that day, she posted that a power outage had forced an extended mid-morning recess. Quote, "There's still no explanation for these unusual disruptions," end quote. It feels almost as if the delays are intentional. Rosenberg's update on January 24th was, quote, "It's been a rough, if short, week for the war court. 2 hearings, 2 courtrooms, 2 sets of translators and stenographers, and periodic power outages unpredictably stopping the proceedings," end quote. That same day, Herridge reported that she met with USS Cole survivors who told her they hoped that President Trump could get the case to trial, saying, "This is the trial that never ends." It's understandable, considering that the USS Cole bombing took place 25 years ago. Catherine didn't mention the power outages. On January 27th, Catherine reported that hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars are spent every year on the ongoing trials. Quote, "Multiple administrations, both Republican and Democrat, have failed to close these operations. As we return to Washington, D.C., it's time for answers on how U.S. tax dollars are being spent, government efficiency, and why justice has been delayed for so many victims and their families," end quote. She tagged Doge in that post. We've been led to believe that Catherine is a trusted journalist, so it was odd that she was questioning the spending at Guantanamo Bay now. It's true that millions of dollars are spent per inmate. In 2013, with 166 prisoners, the per inmate cost was estimated at $2.7 million. Today, with 15 prisoners, the cost increased to an estimated $44 million per inmate. Catherine asked if it was time for the Doge treatment at Guantanamo Bay. With almost $1 billion in Department of Defense contracts, as well as the annual cost of operations, it's not a bad idea. Her calling attention to it under President Trump's leadership is what I find interesting. There seems to be an increase in focus on Guantanamo Bay. On January 30th, Catherine posted, quote, "Based on President Trump's new memorandum, things will be getting busier at the base," in reference to his memorandum expanding migrant operations. She didn't mention Doge or government efficiency at that time. Was the $1 billion in awarded contracts intended for migrant operations for the 15 terrorist inmates, or for some other reason? Illegal immigrants. They're not migrants. On January 29th, 2025, President Trump signed a memorandum expanding the Migrant Operations Center at Guantanamo Bay to full capacity. In the early 1990s, the area was home to a detention camp for Haitian and Cuban refugees. Tent cities were built, and more than 45,000 refugees were held there. The detention camp and its tent cities were overseen by then Attorney General William Barr, the same William Barr who served as Attorney General in the first Trump administration. Knowing that, is it odd that he hasn't offered a recent opinion on the temporary detention of immigrants at Guantanamo Bay? The detention of illegal immigrants at Guantanamo Bay has been in the works for several years. In 2017, the Army flew in 400 troops plus Homeland Security and Department of State officials to rehearse a mock migration crisis. The Miami Herald reported that the proposed up to $100 million migrant camp project is a bit mysterious. While writing Welcome to the Bay, an article, link here. I envisioned the revamped tent city migrant camp would be used for members of Antifa or Black Lives Matter who participated in the attempted overthrow of our country. There was a video of a man at a protest handing money to rioters. Those people probably didn't realize they were participating in the attempted overthrow of our country. To them, it was an excuse to cause chaos and get paid for it. There was also a video of a guy jumping out of a minivan in front of a group of protesters. He grabs someone from the group, throws him in the van, and the van takes off. The people left standing on the sidewalk recorded the encounter. It was clear this was a person with authority hauling someone off, and the people left behind were shocked by it. There were many reports of people in fatigues grabbing people and throwing them into unmarked cars. Where were those people whisked off to? The reports of pallets of bricks dropped off in cities prior to planned protests had to be orchestrated by someone. Those are the people I imagined were residing in tent cities in Guantanamo Bay, not illegal immigrants. So far, the people we're told have been sent to Guantanamo Bay have been from Venezuela. The Tren de Aragua gang from Venezuela, who we should fear the most. After all, they were eating the dogs in Ohio. Whatever happened to MS-13 and their scary neck tattoos? The news was filled with their mugshots and stories of their violent criminal acts. Why weren't MS-13 gang members shipped to Guantanamo Bay? Why is there a renewed interest in sending immigrants to Guantanamo Bay if not to draw attention to the area? The troops. Although media restrictions were placed on the area in 2018, new images of the tents have been circulated through the media. More media coverage is happening there than has happened in many years. On February 3rd, military troops arrived at Guantanamo Bay to assist in the illegal immigrant detention operation. In less than a week of signing the memorandum, the federal government had mobilized troops and sent them to Guantanamo Bay. Now, that is an example of government efficiency we're not used to seeing. Over 1,000 troops, in addition to those already stationed there, were deployed to Guantanamo Bay. Military medical personnel, including surgeons and OBGYN specialists, were preparing for deployment to Guantanamo Bay and were told to plan on being stationed there for more than 6 months. According to the Department of Defense, the first flight containing 10 immigrants arrived in Guantanamo Bay on February 5th, just 1 week after the memorandum was issued. Quote, "We want somewhere else to hold them safely in the interim. Criminal illegals, Guantanamo Bay is a perfect place," said Pete Hegseth. On February 12th, the New York Times reported that Homeland Security and the Defense Department have been unwilling to answer questions about what was happening to the immigrants at Guantanamo Bay. Although the names of the first immigrants were not released, the New York Times published a list of 53 men who were reportedly being held in Camp 6, a 200-cell minimum security prison. On February 20th, as the media continued reporting on the tragedy of the poor, innocent immigrants being held at Guantanamo Bay, and as lawsuits were being filed on the unfairness of it all, the New York Times reported that the immigrants had abruptly been cleared out. 2 passenger planes, operated by a charter aircraft company, flew to Guantanamo Bay to take the illegal immigrants back to Venezuela. Prior to their transfer out of Guantanamo Bay, questions were being raised about whether the government has the legal authority to take people there for detention. Immigrant rights lawyers have gone to court seeking access to the immigrants, and others are expected to file challenges to the policy. If you entered the country illegally, why would you have any rights to an American lawyer? Thankfully, the government is not required to provide free legal representation to illegal immigrants, so at least we don't have to pay for that. We only have to pay to feed, clothe, temporarily house them, and pay for their transportation back home. The majority of our media are still anti-American, and it can be seen in the contrast between the Laura Ingraham Fox News report and the NBC News report from Guantanamo Bay. If you watch both reports, you will immediately notice the difference in the pro-America and anti-America reporting of both networks. The movement of immigrants to Guantanamo Bay and their quick transfer out of the area caught the media by surprise. Just as they were gearing up for their Bleeding Heart series of the immigrants who were there, planes arrived to take them back to their homes. We've become accustomed to the chaotic nature of events surrounding the Trump administration, even if the media still hasn't. Jonathan Blitzer with The New Yorker wrote about the chaos, and it's clear he still doesn't understand its purpose. Blitzer wrote that President Trump, quote, added a fresh indignity to Guantanamo's dark history with his memorandum. Migrants were villainized and treated like an existential threat to the country. To Laken Riley, Jose Antonio Ibarra was an existential threat, as is every other immigrant who is in our country illegally. Americans shouldn't have to wait to become victims of violent crime before our government acts on our out-of-control illegal immigration problem. In Blitzer's opinion, sending detainees to Guantanamo seems more like a public relations stunt than like an operational decision. These people aren't migrants escaping a tsunami in Haiti. They made a conscious decision to enter our country without following our laws. They committed a crime. Perhaps Blitzer would feel better if he sponsored a group of immigrants. The only area Blitzer got right was the chaos surrounding Guantanamo Bay. Like so many other members of the media, he doesn't understand President Trump's art of distraction that keeps the media chasing their tails while important, meaningful work is undertaken to make America great again. If there is one thing the movement of immigrants to Guantanamo Bay has accomplished, it's gotten everyone to pay attention to the area to see what happens next. Is that the point? In addition to the attention drawn to Guantanamo Bay, I'm sure seeing others sent there has served as a good deterrent to illegals still in the country or those who considered coming. You are not welcome here, and we will send you to Guantanamo Bay if you choose to come illegally. Any lawyer pursuing legal action and any member of the media publishing negative articles about the deportation of people who came to the United States illegally should be considered enemies of the people. If those lawyers and media spent as much time advocating for American citizens as they did the illegals among us, our world would be a better place. Why the upgrades? Almost $1 billion has been contracted to renovate the area since President Trump first came into office. Were those improvements for the illegal immigrants who will be sent there? In 2018, the Pentagon invoked emergency construction authority and notified Congress that it planned to spend $14 million on a new war court. They cited national security and called the construction a strategically crucial, time-sensitive expansion project. Why, in 2018, was this project considered time-sensitive? Is the new war court for the illegal immigrants or the 15 remaining terror suspects? What about the contracts for the legal complex with added skiffs? The detention legal office and other improvements to the area, was that intended for illegal immigrants? There are still a lot of questions surrounding Guantanamo Bay. For now, it seems that our attention is being drawn to the area. The days of ignorant bliss of what happens in our government are gone for many of us. We've grown accustomed to so many balls in the air that it's difficult to remain focused on just one. Just this week, we had social media influencers pushing for the release of the Epstein list, the immigrants in and out of Guantanamo Bay, and President Trump kicking Zelensky out of the Oval Office. Will there ever come a day when the ball settles somewhere and we can focus on what really was and what will be? For me, I'm quite the conspiracy theorist, and nothing seems real to me. You are watching a movie sits well with me, and my level of freakout has its limits. I'm optimistic and more than ready for whatever comes next. My gut tells me that our attention is being drawn to Guantanamo Bay for a reason, and that reason is not to call attention to illegal immigrants who spend a night or two there, and it's also not to call attention to the terror suspects who have been there for decades. And that's Dawn and Billie. It's pretty good stuff, huh? Why, Dawn? Whatever do you mean? I'm pretty excited too. Dawn, we look forward to your next reporting on this brilliant work. Go to Dawn Billie. That's Dawn, spelled as you would expect. Billie, Billie, .substack.com. Go there and subscribe. Do a paid subscription if you can. Let's encourage the brilliant members of this community to use their brilliance to edify the rest of us. Also, don't forget, take care of your health. You can do that by going to epicminerals.net. At epicminerals.net, we offer a zeolite binding agent that detoxifies from heavy metals and microplastics, a colloidal silver product that is mixed with humic and fulvic acids that detoxifies as well, and also, we think, and I strongly believe, supports the body in its defense against electromagnetic interference. And of course, the humic and fulvic acid capsules, Wellness Extra, all of these products made by patriots for patriots right here in the United States of America. Go to epicminerals.net, promo code Shapiro for 10% off. Next, I want to do a piece from Erik Carlson called A New Hollywood. From badlands.substack.com, A New Hollywood. It's Already Happening by Erik Carlson. While working a full-time job, raising a family, and trying to create content on a regular basis, by far the most criticism I receive for my writing is about my typos, misspellings, and bad grammar. But after this, I think two other criticisms stand out. I receive criticism for not homeschooling my children, for exposing them to public school propaganda, and I get some pushback from people wondering why I consume Hollywood entertainment. As a member of Generation X, like many others, cinema played a big role in my adolescence. I can remember the theaters where I watched each personally momentous movie. I can recall in vivid detail seeing Star Wars with my family and the feeling of walking on clouds afterwards. I can still visualize standing in line and later sitting in each theater watching The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Road Warrior, E.T., Rocky III, Rambo, Top Gun, The Terminator, Ghostbusters. I can remember reading movie posters of movies I knew nothing about and deciding to see the movie based solely on the poster. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Die Hard, Back to the Future. In some cases, I can vividly remember where I sat in each theater. In looking back over the movie titles I just mentioned, I can see that they all have some things in common besides being great movies that have stood the test of time. They all include brave heroes who in many cases risk life and limb to stand up to a corrupt and evil enemy or system in order to save humanity. Was I being conditioned by Hollywood in a good way? Unlike Vivek Ramaswamy, I don't believe most young children should be dreaming of someday writing software code or winning math contests. I believe young children should dream about being brave and selfless. They should dream about pulling a person out of a burning building, fighting off an invading army, standing up for a person who's being bullied, or scoring a 90-yard touchdown. This isn't to say they shouldn't someday aspire to work at Microsoft or Google, or even that they should instead become a firefighter, police officer, soldier, or play in the NFL. This is merely to say that at 6 years old, children should still be dreamers and not ruthlessly pragmatic. Hollywood has really changed over the years, especially over the past decade. Instead of creating dreamers and promoting bravery and selflessness, it is now propagandizing a country. As much as I still love to sit in a theater eating popcorn while taking in an epic story, it's now too expensive. And frankly, there aren't a lot of movies worthy of leaving the house to see. Gone are the heroic tales, and in is the woke conditioning. Standing up to the system has been replaced with succumbing to the system. Even when a brave hero is the protagonist of a movie, oftentimes, that hero must be a woke version. Female instead of male, black instead of white, gay instead of straight, transgender instead of, dare I say, cisgender. Boys are being taught their masculinity is toxic, while girls are taught their femininity is weak. Males and females are conditioned to exist somewhere in the middle. A very Baphomet concept. I understand when people say Hollywood is evil and that it is run by a bunch of satanic pedophiles. I don't disagree with this sentiment whatsoever. I also believe many at the top are truly evil, and many under them have the success that they have because they have submitted to this evil. But this doesn't mean there aren't plenty of decent people in the Hollywood entertainment system, or that the medium of telling a story through film is inherently evil. I understand when people say Hollywood is evil and that it is run by a bunch of satanic pedophiles. I don't disagree with this sentiment whatsoever. I also believe many at the top are truly evil, and many under them have the success they have because they have submitted to this evil. But it doesn't mean there aren't plenty of decent people in the Hollywood entertainment system, or that the medium of storytelling through film is inherently evil. Recently, Donald Trump appointed Jon Voight, Sylvester Stallone, and Mel Gibson as ambassadors to Hollywood. Why would he do this unless he thought Hollywood has been and could be again an important part of what makes America America? He obviously sees the destructive force Hollywood has become. Why not just burn it to the ground if there is no hope for it? In my opinion, Trump understands that Hollywood could be used this way. It could be used the way it was used with me and many others in their youth, to inspire and shape while entertaining. I once saved a man from being beaten to death by 5 other men. I survived that ordeal almost completely unscathed, only by the grace and protection of God. My dumb courage and need for justice was certainly influenced by the movies I watched growing up. While dozens of people stood around and refused to get involved, I voluntarily stood toe-to-toe with 5 men. And for a brief moment, I became Dirty Harry, Johnny Rambo, and Rocky, all rolled into one. A superhero complex, one might say, but is that really a bad thing? In my opinion, young boys should aspire someday to be Batman, not an accountant. The other day, my wife and I watched a show called Lioness from Paramount Plus. Season 2 came out less than 3 months ago. It's about a group of CIA operatives who are infiltrating the Mexican drug cartel to rescue a kidnapped American politician. As we were watching the 3rd episode, there is a scene where a dad, who is a doctor, is cooking breakfast for his daughters as we are brought into the middle of their conversation about how one of the girl's friends identifies. The girls consider their dad transphobic and backward for questioning how the person identifies. The dad defends himself, saying he doesn't know anything about the person. Why should he just accept how they identify? After being called transphobic, he states that a phobia is an irrational fear of something, and disagreeing with someone or not feeling one has enough information to simply accept a statement isn't fear. His wife chimes in that everyone must have the right to disagree and challenge another's point of view. She says, as a CIA agent, she fights to protect that right to question or disagree. I almost fell off the couch. What was I witnessing? This was the most anti-woke thing I've seen come out of Hollywood in years, if ever. Mental note, who owns Paramount? Afterwards, we watched an episode of a new Showtime drama called The Agency, about a CIA agent who comes in from the cold and settles back into life after living undercover for several years. This show came out less than 2 months ago. Something is happening. I then asked myself, who owns Showtime? Recently, we watched another show from Paramount Plus called Landman, a show about the oil fields in Texas. Can you say drill, baby, drill? It turns out that Showtime is owned by Paramount Global. Paramount Global is run by a Trump ally, Sherry Redstone, who took over for her father, Sumner Redstone, in 2016. Sumner died in 2020. He was also a Trump ally. In looking into this, I discovered that Paramount Global is in the process of merging with and will eventually be controlled by Skydance Media. Skydance Media is run by David Ellison, the son of Larry Ellison, who co-founded the tech company Oracle. Larry Ellison is a well-known and very wealthy Trump ally and financial supporter. Some may remember during the latest presidential campaign that when 60 Minutes did an interview with Kamala Harris, it was quickly discovered that the interview was edited to make her look better. They basically edited out as much unintelligible word salad as they could. Trump viewed this behavior as election tampering. He sued CBS for $10 billion. Trump critics and CBS leadership laughed off the lawsuit, calling it frivolous. Very recently, CBS has discussed settling out of court. But why? And who owns CBS? It turns out Paramount Global owns CBS. Paramount Global is in the process of merging with Skydance Media and doesn't want anything to happen that would interfere with the deal going through. Trump is suing CBS for $10 billion, yet Paramount Global, who owns CBS, is only worth currently around $8 billion. For the 7 years prior to COVID, Paramount Global's worth fluctuated between $20 and $40 billion. 3 years ago, it shot up to $60 billion when it launched its streaming service before immediately coming back down. How do you sue a company for more than it's worth, one might ask? What might cause someone to drop their lawsuit or settle out of court for a much lesser amount? Control over the company? Oracle's Larry Ellison is currently in the news as Trump rolls out Project Stargate, a plan for the U.S. to invest $500 billion into AI infrastructure in partnership with Oracle, OpenAI, and SoftBank. At the same time, Trump suggested that either Elon Musk or Larry Ellison buy TikTok as well. I feel it's safe to say Ellison is a big part of Trump's plan going forward. I've heard some within the truther community, or in some cases pretending to be in the community, refer to Ellison as being a CIA stooge. Seriously, everyone within the American tech space has some past connection to DARPA and or the CIA. This doesn't mean they're currently working against Trump or haven't had their strings cut. Some want to believe Trump is being bamboozled or is somehow complicit in future plans to destroy America. To them, Trump is in a constant pendulum swing between being a genius and being mentally challenged, or between being a superhero and a supervillain. It took only 2 days with Trump as POTUS for some to become completely unhinged. It's reminiscent of Trump winning the election and people quickly turning on him for his cabinet picks. Some of his reaction stems from the trauma abuse we have experienced, but some of it is contrived. Back to Paramount Global. If Larry Ellison's son's company, Skydance Media, rings a bell, they produced the new Top Gun Maverick movie, as well as the Mission Impossible franchise and Jack Reacher. What's the common theme here? Tom Cruise. Even though Paramount Global and Skydance are yet to merge, if you went on to Paramount Plus at any time in the past couple of years, it almost seems like a Tom Cruise streaming app. Skydance has also produced television shows, notably Reacher and Jack Ryan. Reacher is a show about an ex-military police major who uses his skills to solve crimes. On Jack Ryan, a CIA analyst goes out into the field to save America from foreign threats. Some may remember that the original Top Gun movie was the biggest military recruiting tool ever created. When did the movie come out? 1986. Who was POTUS at the time? Ronald Reagan. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, released in the summer of 2023, is one of the last movies I've seen at a theater. It came out 6 months or so after the big push for AI started in late 2022 with the release of ChatGPT. The movie plot? The Mission Impossible team must save the world from a powerful AI system, which, if in the wrong hands, could be used to take over the world. I remember thinking at the time that the movie was warning us about the potential dangers of AI technology, and the production of the movie had to start well before AI became a popular talking point. Is Tom Cruise one of the good guys? Is there a faction of Hollywood that is trying to warn us of possible dangers and opening our eyes to future events? Are we being told America needs to be the one wielding the AI sword and not its adversaries? After discovering who owns Paramount and who is merging with it to take it over, I thought about the theme of the second season of Paramount's Lioness. The CIA military crew is rescuing an American politician from a Mexican drug kingpin and, spoiler alert, trafficked children. The series shows how ruthless the cartel is and the means they'll use to stay in control, the carrot or the stick. It shows how politicians and government officials are offered large sums of money to protect the cartel, and that if they turn down the deal, their whole family will be killed. It's not as simple as corrupt people taking money to do corrupt things. I've come to the conclusion that Hollywood is not only being saved, but that it has already been infiltrated by Trump's people, just as Hollywood has been used to condition us and has used predictive programming to prepare us to accept future deep state narratives and agendas. I believe Hollywood is now being used to prepare us for what Trump has in store. I believe Trump will take down the Mexican drug cartel. If the number of shows and movies being put out about intelligence agencies by Trump allies is any indication, I assume Trump isn't looking to scatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces, but rather that he intends to reform it. I've referred to Trump as being Reagan 2.0. This isn't to say Trump's efforts are just a continuation of Reagan's, but rather a vastly improved version, a version that doesn't include compromising with the enemy. Reagan took control of Hollywood during his 8 years in office. He pushed for movies to be made that promoted strong American characters like Rambo. The movies during his 8 years made the American military seem powerful. This not only inspired Americans, but intimidated foreign adversaries. Just as Reagan understood the power of Hollywood, I believe Trump understands it as well. Just because the medium of storytelling through film has been used to do evil, especially in recent years, it doesn't mean it can't also be used for good, to inspire. Just because AI can be used for evil doesn't mean it can't also be used for good. Just because the financial system has been used to enslave us doesn't mean it can't also be used for good. Just because the medical industry has been used for evil since the Rockefellers took it over 100 years ago, it doesn't mean it can't be transformed to do good. The truth is that Hollywood, big tech, the financial system, and big medicine can all be transformed to do good. All four have been used to control, brainwash, enslave us, and make us sick. But it doesn't mean they can't all someday be used for good. We must allow ourselves to envision how things could be and should be, rather than how they have been and currently are. Everything is being transformed. The patriots are now in control. What a glorious time to be alive. That's our show. Tomorrow, I think I'll go ahead and finish up with 2 more Erik Carlson pieces. We'll see what happens from there. Thank you to Dawn Billie. Don't forget to go to her Substack, Dawn Billie, DAWNBILLIE.substack.com. And of course, Erik Carlson, Erik CERIKC.substack.com. Find him on Badlands Media at badlands.substack.com. Don't forget to improve your health right now at epicminerals.net. Get your humic and fulvic acids, get your zeolite, get your colloidal silver, get your N-acetyl L-cysteine, your vitamin D. Get what you need to detoxify and keep yourself healthy and nutrified. epicminerals.net, promo code Shapiro. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.